Joan of Arc is a scenario-based game of medieval battle and exploration set in France during the 100 Years' War. The core of the game are the historical accounts of that period. However, these are accounts from the medieval perspective and include real events like the werewolf hunt of La Croix de Loup Pendu in 1333. We have chosen to include these myths and legends as if they are all literally true, and so werewolves, unicorns, angels, demons, and dragons are all possible in Joan of Arc. You have the option to play a historical version as if these myths were imaginary, or include the fantastical nightmares of the medieval mind. Each game of Joan of Arc follows the story set out in a specific scenario. Scenarios are written for varying numbers of players from 1 to 4, with 2 players being the most common. Each scenario has its own way of setting up the hexagons that make up the playing area. It also lists the soldiers, heroes, monsters, and non-combatants who have a part in telling the tale. Combat is not usually the only route to victory in Joan of Arc. Depending on the scenario, a player may need to explore the map, talk to the locals, or battle his enemies. Sometimes all 3. In addition to the many scenarios, Joan of Arc also has a battle mode. This allows players to choose forces and fight on maps of their own design. To play a game, players first decide on a scenario. This will tell them how to set up the board and which forces each player has. The board is made up of hexagon tiles, or hexes, that are each divided into 1, 2, or 3 areas. In addition to the hex map showing the playing area, the game has a number of boards and tracks. Each player has a board to hold their current resources. Next to this, they will place a reference card for each unit under their control. Turn and river cards are shared by all players. These are placed to one side along with pools of spare resources. These resources are represented by wooden cubes in various colors. Resource cubes are gained and spent by each player throughout the game. How and when a player chooses to use these resources will dictate the outcome of the game. Joan of Arc is played in rounds. A round starts with a shared phase, and then each player has one turn in sequence. When all players have taken their turn, the round ends and a new one begins. During the shared phase, a new turn card is revealed. This tells the players how many red resource cubes they get for that turn. Then, 3 new cards are turned over to form this turn's river. Each player then chooses one of the cards in the river and takes the benefit on that card. Several players may choose the same card. Benefits of river cards vary. They can give a player additional resource cubes, allow them to change the type of resources they already have, or offer some other benefit such as re-rolling combat dice or drawing myth or tactics cards. When all players have chosen a river card and resolved its effect, the first player takes their turn. During a player's turn, they spend their resource cubes to activate units on the board. They may spend any or all of their cubes, or save some for future turns. Unlike many games, units are not activated individually. Instead, an area is chosen, and all units in that area may activate to move, fight, pray, interrogate, or whatever is appropriate. Each area can usually be activated only once per turn. However, individual units may activate more than once if they are in more than one area when it is activated. This makes the sequence of activations critical. For example, a player places a cube in an area and activates a unit to move into a second area. If a cube was then spent on this second area, the unit would be activated a second time. The different types of resource cubes are as follows. Red cubes activate all units in a single area. These are the basic activation cube. Green cubes work like red ones. In addition, they trigger the charge rule for any units in the area they are spent in. Typically, this allows cavalry to move an extra area and attack. Pink cubes may be spent like red cubes. Alternatively, they can be played in an area that already has a red or green cube in it. This is the only way to activate an area twice in a single player turn. Blue cubes may be spent like red cubes. Alternatively, they can be used during your opponent's turn after they have resolved one of their cubes. This interruption can upset an enemy's dastardly plans if played at the right moment. Yellow cubes represent experience. They can be spent to level up your heroes, buy rerolls, or gain scenario-specific advantages. Black cubes are for paying for the effects of myth or tactics cards, or buying rerolls. Movement is always into an adjacent area unless a unit has a special rule, such as charge. Searching is usually a case of moving into an area with an unknown marker. To interrogate a local, you must move a unit into their area. You then choose a card, and your opponent reads out your options. Once you decide what to say to them, your opponent will tell you how they react. It's not always how you expect. In these times of war, combat is inevitable. Each unit has a number and color of dice to roll for both attack and defense. The 3 colors of dice have different combinations of results on them, and range from the lethal to the highly defensive. To resolve combat, simply roll the attack and defense dice and compare the results. Units can flee, suffer wounds, or be killed outright. Those who have been wounded rather than killed are placed on a track. At the end of the turn, players will roll to see if they die from their wounds or recover and return to the battlefield. Victory goes to whichever player fulfills his objective first. Sometimes this will mean killing a specific enemy. Other times it will mean getting the wagons of loot to the castle gates safely, or simply surviving until nightfall. Each scenario is different and will test your skills to their utmost. So, who will you fight for? France or England? Angels or demons?